Welcome back. It's now just about 1 minute after 7 o'clock. It's time for us to take a focus on state of the nation. And today we'd like to reflect on Labor Day that happened yesterday, which turned out to be a disappointment according to some. And I'll start by first of all reintroducing the guests that we have in studio to have this conversation. Remember, you're welcome to participate in this conversation, and the hashtag is KTN Morning Express. You can also tweet, and that's at, the Twitter handles are going to be displayed as we carry on. And joining me in studio, we have Honorable Kuria Kimani, who's a Member of Parliament for Molo. We are also joined by Philip Magal, who is a lawyer, just to weigh in and talk about this. But first of all, we'll start with that Labor Day celebration ended on a gloomy note for workers after Labor Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani failed to announce a wage increment. Workers who attended the event at Uhuru Park expressed disappointment, saying that the cost of living should match the wages. Brenda Kerubo was there and filed this report.
There was music, dancing, a parade from at least 47 unions affiliated to the Central Organization of Trade Unions, and expectations on a wage increment at the Labor Day celebrations in Uhuru Park were high.
Waziri, sisi tumeuliza serikali na tumeandika 15% general wage increase.
The workers settled down, eager to hear the goodies Labour Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani was going to spell out: job creation, mitigating industrial actions, and the President's Big Four agenda of affordable housing, food security, manufacturing and healthcare was Yatani's agenda.
Affordable housing aimed at ensuring access to decent and affordable dwellings, particularly to the low earners, will not only safeguard workers' dignity, but also create more employment opportunities for Kenyans.
The Central Organization of Trade Unions is advocating for a 15% general wage increment. Kotu says this will cushion Kenyans from rising inflation, which reached 6.58% in April. Politicians attending the event also gave their support for the wage increment.
Tuangalie deni la umma, public debt. Na mimi nawasihi wafanyikazi wote, trade unions zote, wabunge wote, this is the time to focus, kwa sababu deni la umma ambalo tuko nalo ni kubwa sana, na hilo ndio linafanya ushuru unaongezwa kila siku.
Masuala ya kukata pesa za wafanyakazi kupeleka kwa nyumba, hiyo karatasi lazima iletwe bunge, ndio wabunge wajue huu mzigo tunawekea wafanyakazi namna gani na tunaweza kuondoa namna gani. The reason why there is poverty is because of corruption. And I want to support the general salary increment kwa wafanyakazi wote.
Unions had also expressed disappointment after the Federation of Kenya Employers boycotted the event. Kotu and FKE are disagreeing over the 1.5% housing levy.
Juzi walijifanya champions of social justice kupinga 1.5% ya housing. Nikamuuliza lini paka alimpa hifadhi panya.
It is ashaming today that as we are gathered here, Mwajiri, the employer, Federation of Kenya Employers, has boycotted this event. This is a shame.
Brenda Kerubo, KTN News.
All right, now capturing there the words of Wilson Sosion there, saying that this is a shame, FKE not being there. But generally speaking, it was very poorly attended. And could this be an indication that we are losing momentum? And I'll start with you, Mheshimiwa, Honorable Kimani, on the question of is Labor Day a day that is supposed to be a day that the Kenyan worker or generally the worker should be celebrated and at least honored for what he has done. Any country that wants to build its economy would make sure that its worker is taken care of. This doesn't seem to be the case. And the reason I say that is if we look at the government side, they brought in the tax, the VAT on fuel products not too long ago, and of course Kenyans were not too happy about that. Now we have the housing levy of 1.5, but no increase for the worker on salaries. Your thoughts on whether the Labor Day has lost momentum in this country by virtue of the fact that the worker has been left out of the whole deal?
Yes, I would say that yesterday was a disappointing day to watch. And I'm talking this not just as a member of parliament, but also as a worker in this country. Because I felt that there were many issues that should have been addressed yesterday. And even in terms of the speakers for the day, I expected the voice of the teachers, I expected the voice of the doctors, the voice of the nurses, and not just represented by the court officials, but by the workers themselves. On the issue about salary increment, we keep talking about salary increment, but I think we're losing the point here. 20% of our population is either unemployed or underemployed. So the people that will, for example, be affected by the minimum wage are a minimum. The majority of the people in this country are the ones that do not have jobs. We have youths that have graduated from university, that have graduated from colleges, that do not have a job. So the conversations really about the Kenyan worker is how do we have a more trained, a more skilled, and a more empowered workforce. And I'm saying even, the issue about having a monthly salary. Why do we need to have a monthly salary? Could we probably go to where we're paying people per hour and say, I work 5 days a week, and this is and for this number of hours, this is what I'm being paid for. And again, 60% of our GDP, of our expenditure is on recurrent expenditure, which means it goes to payment of salaries and salary-related expenses. 15% of other expenditures is spent on counties, so which only leaves us 25% of our expenditure on development projects. And these are the development projects that hopefully should employ our young people. Because we need to realize as a country that's not possible to have everyone in formal employment. And
okay.
So this conversation...
Although the minimum wage, as much as it would not affect, everybody, is an indication of how we are doing as an economy. Not too long ago, we had the Treasury give us an increase of 6.3% on our growth, which of course was contested in terms of figures. But when we look at what the government is doing and what's happening on the ground, there's a huge disparity in terms of what the government is telling us and what we feel on the ground. So minimum wage really just becomes an indicator of where we should be as a country. And let me hear your opening remarks, Philip.
Yes, I think the labor movement in the country has lost direction. It seems more concerned with politics than with employment matters. Yesterday was a big disappointment, of course, more so because there was no increment on the minimum wage. Remember, our minimum wage is really low, and I would say a big chunk of Kenyans fall or earn less than the minimum wage. In fact, the government doesn't enforce it. Let's look at those in the security sectors and transportation sector, which employs so many people. And if you were to look at the details of their earnings, you'll realize that it's way below the minimum wage. But even more important is that the minimum wage falls way below the living wage, which has been put at around 22,000, meaning that people earn way below that which they need for sustenance. And as you rightly pointed out, they tell us that the economy grew by 6.3%. How then do we make sure that this trickles down to the last man in our society? For a worker or for a laborer, that would be through wage increment by a similar margin. But then we don't see that, meaning that the wealth then is being hoarded by a few. There are other arguments to counter the argument for wage increment, which is that the cost of production would increase, meaning therefore that there would be low production, or which would again affect the employee. These are all matters that need to be balanced, and the only way to balance it is by making sure that the economy develops, the economy expands. How do we do that? Those are some of the issues that we ought to have seen addressed yesterday.
Addressed there.
That is why FKE should have been there to tell us what they are working on. That's why the government should have been there to tell us.
Well, one of the reasons that FKE give out as boycotting is because, of course, we know that they were not in agreement with KOTU in regards to the 15% increment for minimum wage. And their reason was that the economy has not grown. It doesn't reflect that. The employers feel that they would be pushed to a corner order to increase that.
Which again calls into question the figures released by by Treasury last week. Has the economy really grown? Are we progressing or going backwards? But the Kenyan is still facing the same problems. We are told inflation is at the highest rate in almost 5 years. That is at 6.7%. We are facing drought. We are facing increased taxation. There is unemployment. There is underemployment. Most people are doing jobs which they are overqualified for. They are earning way less than they ought to be earning. And these are issues that are pressing hard everyday Kenyan, and they need addressed.
Okay, let me come to you, Mheshimiwa. As a legislator, are you proud to be a legislator in a country that the worker seems to be oppressed day by day? I mean, like I mentioned, there are those increases that we have had in taxes. Now we have a levy that the government has introduced, the 1.5, which will be deducted, yet there is no increase on our wages.
It's a difficult time for a country, and as a member of parliament and as a young person of this country, I cry for my country, to be honest. The 6% economic growth that you're talking about clearly does not reflect to mwananchi. The discussions around the street is that there is no money. Hakuna pesa. And the reason why there is no money is that trickling of money from the national government to the county government to mwananchi, the PPIs, the PPPs, the public-private partnerships that should be working to make sure that that we cushion Kenyans against employment, because truth be told, the government is not able to employ everyone. That these things are not working. Let me give you an example. In my constituency, Daima opened a dairy factory, and we're hoping that this would end the issue about milk prices. They have not been paid. Then I realized that they're not buying milk from the farmers. So I went to the factory and told, guys, why are you not buying milk from here? And they told me that it's costing them less to buy milk from Uganda. As you're speaking, an egg that is laid in Kitengela is more expensive than an egg that comes all the way from Uganda. The cost of doing business becomes so high, and that's why I'm tempted to agree with the Federation of Kenyan Employers. It is not sustainable to have this salary increments, because the figures that we're speaking as a government do not reflect on the ground. The cost of doing business is an all-time high. Businesses are not making profits.
So where is our problem? Because you've brought out some very critical and important issues, and it is true. It is actually cheaper to import than to eat or consume our own. Let's talk about fish from China. It's cheaper than our own fish, or even Uganda.
Yes.
Not too long ago, I went to Kisumu, and the fish was very expensive, and I asked why, and they said, look, we don't have fish locally, we import it from Uganda. So what needs to be done? There definitely seems to be a problem.
We need, for example, let's talk about our taxes, for example. If you open your small kiosk down here, you need to get a license from the county government. So you pay county government fees, you pay NEMA fees, you pay fees for all this and all that, and later you're expected to pay corporate tax or income tax from the profits that you get. So in terms of, for example, taxation, I have said this as having in the Committee of Finance and National Planning, and I've actually told Treasury that we need to harmonize, for example, our taxation, because we end up collecting taxes from everywhere, and as a result we end up spending a lot of money as a business in terms of just getting licenses, for example, alone. And that's why, as a business person, I don't want to expand to another shop, because if I do that, then I increase taxes.
It doesn't make business sense.
It doesn't make a business sense. So we came up with the county governments, and we thought that the county governments would make our work easier. Advertising, for example. If you want to advertise on your truck and you're moving from Mombasa to Kisumu, do you know you have to pay advertising levies in every county? No, these are the issues that we're saying that we need to make sure that they're streamlined so that we reduce the cost of doing business for our businesses.
All right, Philip, your thoughts on where we need to shift, because evidently what Treasury is telling us,
yes,
what we feel on the ground are two different stories.
Yes.
Is it a dishonest government, or is it the fact that maybe, because their argument is, even with that 6.3%,
yes,
to be fair, it takes time for it to trickle down and for it to be felt by the common mwananchi?
I believe that there was some growth, but I also do believe that it was never felt by the worker or the common mwananchi, meaning therefore that somebody somewhere is holding wealth. That one has to be said. FKE, I don't think, is being very frank. We know that very few people control the wealth in this country, and those few people don't want to share it with the rest of the country. I would like to address a question that you posed to Mheshimiwa, and that is, how can we make the country work? One of the big agendas is manufacturing.
Correct.
We've seen Kenyans, we import even matchsticks. We do import even, the plastic spoons that we use in parties and so on and so forth, which are things that which can be done here in the country. We need to boost manufacturing. We need to boost agriculture as well. We've seen what has happened to maize sector. We have seen what has happened to the coffee sector. We've seen what has happened to the sugar industries. It is all about the government and how it is mismanaging our affairs. Why would we open our borders to import sugar all the way from Brazil when there's a sugar farmer struggling somewhere in Mumias? Why would we bring maize from Mexico when our maize is rotting in our stores? The other day, now the government is in a panic that there is no enough maize reserve because of the shortfall in rainfall. Yet maize is rotting in our farms in North Rift.
And maybe, just to interrupt you, maybe yes, then that would advise the theme for the call to celebrate, May Day yesterday,
yes,
which was eradicating corruption to create jobs. Because some of the things you're mentioning, could it be that it's corruption that has led us there? For us to import maize when we have maize rotting in our silos.
Yes. Of course, corruption plays a big part, and we saw people importing maize from Uganda and getting payment before the farmer here in Kenya. We've seen substandard fertilizer coming into the country. We've seen poisoned sugar coming into the country. We've never been told where that sugar is right now. I'm sure we've already taken it in our tea. Imagine if we gave a maize farmer subsidies. If we bought his maize in good price, he would be able to go back to the farm. He would be able to again feed the nation. If we give subsidies to our manufacturers, which is what is happening the world over, that is why an American farmer is able to produce maize more cheaply, because of the subsidies. I was taught in primary school that the only way you can multiply 100 shillings into 200 shillings is by giving subsidies. If you give a farmer, if you buy maize at an improved price, let's say you subsidize the purchase by 100 shillings, and you go sell it to the consumer less than 100 shillings, you will have given the farmer 100 shillings and you will have given the consumer 100 shillings. These are no-brainers. We had industries in industrial area. Go to industrial area today. We have bars there and other like establishment. We no longer have industries. We're even importing biscuits. Look at the shoe production. I was reading in a book by Adam Smith on the nature and sources of the wealth of nation, and it says labor and manufacturing is the key to everything. He gives an example of the manufacture of a pair of shoes. How many people are involved? There is the farmer who is rearing the sheep. There is the person who will slaughter that sheep. There is the person who will prepare the leather. There is the person who will cut it. There is the person who will stitch it up. And at the end of it all, everybody will have money in his pocket. It's really a no-brainer, but then our politicians really don't think along those lines. It is about quick buck for them, corruption. Let me lay my pockets well, forget about the common mwananchi.
All right, your thoughts, Mheshimiwa, and the theme for this year's May Day was eradicating corruption to create jobs. We must begin to agree and admit as Kenyans that corruption is part of why we are where we are. There's huge amounts of money that have been lost. Others, because of the corruption cartels that are there, money is not circulating, because now with the banking laws that are there, we know that there are people who are literally hoarding and keeping money under their mattresses as opposed to having them in banks or having it circulate. Your thoughts on how corruption is playing in, and the fact that as Kenyans we must get to a point where we say, maybe like the protesters, beyond zero corruption?
Yes, corruption has played a key role in this, and let me just weigh in my thoughts about one example of maize. As a government, we start by subsidizing the cost of fertilizers. So actually, the farmer therefore spends less money in terms of the farm, farm inputs, in terms of fertilizer. Once the farmer harvests that maize, then we subsidize the maize by buying the maize at a higher cost than the market value. So what are we saying? We subsidize you when you're planting, and then we also get to subsidize for you when you harvest it. Therefore, is maize planting a viable business? And that's why I said, let's talk about corruption, yes. But let us also agree on the issue about the cost of doing business. In terms, I've talked to you about the simple act of planting maize, agriculture. If you're subsidizing the fertilizer and you're subsidizing the product, that means it is no longer viable to do maize production. What happened to buy Kenya, build Kenya? If I make a nice suit for you using local material, would you buy it, or do you want the one that said made in Turkey?
The issue, like you've highlighted, Mheshimiwa, is the fact that the cost may not be affordable to me. Maybe it is easier for me to get a suit from abroad. And maybe what we could be also looking at is a tax-driven economy, which has proved over time does not work. And we seem to have a tax-driven economy. Even if we look at the national health care, which is one part of the Big Four agenda, it is tax-driven. Is that sustainable?
It is not sustainable. In fact, we don't have a tax-driven economy. We have a politics-driven economy. We have 47 governments. In fact, we have 48 governments. So if we're reducing taxes, how are we going to support those 48 governments? One national government and 47 county governments. I keep saying we have 48 ministers for water. We have 48 ministers for finance. We have 48 ministers for labor. We have 48 ministers for agriculture. So how are we going to run these ministries? As a country, if we said, and look at the discussion we're having now, a referendum, to do what? To create the position of a prime minister and
to expand the executive.
To expand the executive. If we came up with a referendum and said, let us reduce the number of counties, let us reduce government expenditure, how many Kenyans will support it?
Okay, do you think our issue is that we are a politics-driven economy? And talking about politics, we even saw it yesterday. Yesterday was a day, literally, to take care of the welfare of Mwananchi. But what was seen there is more of politics and politicians. In fact, we have the likes of Moses Kuria, who walked out in protest, and he even put on his Facebook page, and he says that he went for a Labor Day commemoration, but it ended up being a political rally. In fact, to quote his words, he said that it was a NASA political rally.
Yes, of course, politics plays a big part in this country. But then the problem is not the politics. The problem is that we do not walk the talk. If we could walk the talk, then I'm telling you, it would be so far ahead. Because if you see the kind of grand ideas that people do discuss, if only we could do half that, then it would be far off. Look at the issue to do with corruption, for example. The president has been talking for the past 2 years, no single conviction. No single sacking of a cabinet secretary. He's been berating, he's been haranguing his ministers. No single reprimand to any one of them. And for that matter, let's focus on agriculture still, because I was raised by agriculture. That is the reason I went to school. That is the reason I'm sitting here today. Imagine if my father had been told to give up on agriculture back then, as much as it was unprofitable. I wouldn't be here today. He wouldn't have been able to pay my fees. And that is the scenario 83% of Kenyans are facing. We are told that agriculture is the mainstay of this economy. It accounts for 65% of our GDP. It accounts for almost 65% again of employment, more so youth employment. Now, agriculture is unprofitable for the simple reason that the government has not developed proper policies to make it work. If I have a 5-acre farm and my brother has a 5-acre farm, and all of us decided to move to one corner of that particular farm, we would have 9 acres to plant. And if the government supplied us with fertilizer, with the machines, we would be able to produce at a much, much lower cost. Uganda has advantages over us. You know, half of Kenya is an arid area, but it is not the same with Uganda. Production or agriculture has been surpassed by time since the turn of the 19th century. But as it is, it's still our mainstay, and we have to make it work. The other is service sector, for example. Our youths, transportation and ICT. What are we doing about it? I mean, that is even if you are to look at it into the future, what are we doing about it? We have failed to mainstream transportation. We've failed to integrate our tech-savvy youth and into productivity. Instead, they are being forced to use... They're being forced.
All right, and I'm going to request that we just take a short break and then come back and conclude. When we come back, I want us to talk purely solutions, because we've looked at, possibly the challenges that we have as a country, some of the things that we've done, but let's just conclude with solutions. What do we do from here? Where do we go from here? So we're going to take a short break right here on Morning Express. When we come back, we conclude on State of the Nation. We're looking at Labor Day and reflecting on a day that many have described as a disappointing day for the Kenyan worker. Do stay with us right here on Morning Express.
This is KTN News.
Je, wewe ni mwokaji mwanagenzi? Je, unaweza kutayarisha keki ndogo tamu sana? Je, unaweza kuoka biskuti zinazopendeza? Je, unaweza kupika pai bora zaidi? Ikiwa unaweza kufanya hivyo, basi ingia katika shindano kubwa la uokaji nchini Kenya ili upate fursa ya kuonyesha ujuzi wako kwa taifa. Ili kutuma ombi mtandaoni, tembelea thegreatkenyanbakeoff.com. Shindano kubwa la uokaji nchini Kenya linaletwa kwako kwa hisani ya Unga Limited, kuchochea uokaji nchini.
Duck it out as well.
This is boxing, you can fight it more than 20 times.
The fight was not easy, but I did my best.
Get paid instantly. Play now. Usibahatishe. Cheza na SportPesa. Cheza na SportPesa.
Business is not just about numbers and figures. The Business Today team takes you to the market to learn when to buy and when to sell by giving you insights on the latest technology, farming methods, tourist destinations, the captains of industries, women moving the economy, and alert you when the trading bell rings.
We bring you the stories from the corporate world as and when they happen.
The world is digitizing so fast and the banking industry is not left behind.
The maiden flight from Paris to Nairobi will herald a new dawn.
The Kenyan dairy farmers have a lot to learn from their Dutch counterparts.
The completion of the improvement of this junction will mean ease of traffic.
Tune in every Monday to Friday at 3 p.m. only on KTN News.
Most informative and educative agricultural TV channel is here. KTN Farmers TV, your 24-hour channel that's dedicated to keeping farmers up with the latest information and current trends in farming and technology. Watch horticultural farming, urban farming, shamba la wanyama, and many more on Bamba Channel 10, Pang 176 and GoTV 811 to learn more on crop diversity for human health and food security.
This is KTN News.
right, and welcome back. And this is Morning Express. It's State of the Nation, and what we're looking at is the plight of the Kenyan worker. Of course, reflecting on Labor Day yesterday and some of the comments that were made. In studio with me, we have Philip Magal and Honorable Kuria Kimani, Member of Parliament for Molo. We are onto the concluding part of this segment.
Yes.
And let's talk solutions. We have a government that has given us 4 main points that seem on paper to be very good. We need to be food secure, manufacturing, universal health coverage, and affordable housing. However, we look at the economy right now and the fact that Kenyans are one of the most taxed workers.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem sustainable. Philip, what do we need to do? What's the solution? How do we get this out? Maybe lower the taxes, create a healthy environment for people to build and work, and build businesses, and hopefully then fund some of these things.
As it stands, the government is trying to squeeze water out of a stone. The Kenyan worker is overtaxed, and there are very few of them. We need to create employment. We need to improve wages so that even if we tax them, we would still have, we would have where to get the money. Let us protect the farmer. Let's make sure that his produce has market. Before we import eggs from Uganda, let's make sure that all our eggs have been sold, even if they are going at 50 shillings. It is the same with manufacturing. We need to supplement agriculture with manufacturing. Let us invite manufacturers to produce their goods here. Let us guarantee them market. Let us guarantee them protection. Let us make sure that they'll have access to the neighboring countries. And of course, in order to do all this, we need to empower our youth. Let us implement the competence-based curriculum. Let us see to it that there is no mismatch between our education and the labor requirements.
All right, Mheshimiwa, in terms of solutions, and also as you speak, you're one of the youngest, I think one of the youngest legislators that we have.
Yes.
And the youth are missing in this whole equation. They're probably the ones who bear the brunt, yet they're the most productive and the biggest in number.
The youth bear, when you talk about unemployment, we're talking about the youth. When talking about even healthcare, we're talking about the youth, because it's the youth that are in the productive age, and therefore they're the ones that are more prone to diseases than even the older people, and they're the ones that are greatly affected by this matter of health. But on solutions, on the big 4, the executive needs to start focusing on the small-scale people, on that person in Elbagon, that person in Molo. We're talking about we're talking about agriculture, for example. Let's have greenhouses for that youth group in Sachangwan. We're talking about manufacturing. Let us have small cottage industries where people can make clothes, where people can make shoes with their hands. The issue about corruption, the solution to the issue about corruption is integrity. Yesterday, during the Labor Day celebrations, Mama Kai put a very good show of where this person was accusing someone else of being corrupt, and then someone ended up whipping the people that actually gave the bribe to this person that was taking these bribes so that he could have employed. So integrity and corruption, I keep saying that most of us hate corruption, not because it's bad, but because we are not the ones in corruption. So we begin by a culture change as a country. And lastly, we need to agree to buy Kenya and build Kenya. So even if it means paying 100 shillings more or 50 shillings more to support that mwanabiashara in Turi or in Molo or wherever, let us do that and support our own
breaking
economy.
down the cost? Because you're talking to the same person who cannot earn, does not have a job, has minimum wage not increased, spending a little bit more on something local, yet they don't have it. So if they don't have it, they would rather buy international if it is cheaper. Why not look at making sure that we make whatever we produce locally sustainable and affordable?
Out of all the money we collect from you in taxes, 60% of it is spent on running the government. So that's why it needs to start. Let us have a lean government. We have 47 counties. We have 349 members of parliament. We have senators. We have thousands of members of county assemblies. We have 47 speakers.
And we're talking about expanding the executive branch.
And now, the discussion that we have now, and directly that's could come out of the Building Bridges initiative, is let us have an expanded executive. So if we collect X from you and only spend less in development, we will not going to go far. But if we have a leaner government, I assure you that we'll have And that's why during Moi's time, there was corruption, yes. But I think people used to feel money in their pockets. Why?
If I may just jump in, sorry for interjecting, Mheshimiwa. Look at what Honorable Matiang'i brought out the other day. We are buying uniform from China or Turkey, police uniform, when we can have our women tailor those uniforms here. Imagine if that was done. And that is what happens across all the level. Go to all the government offices and see the kind of desks there. They are not manufactured here in this country.
They're from China.
Yes, go look at the pens, look at everything that the government uses. If the government alone, and somebody once told me, by the way, if you're not doing business with government, then you're not doing business at all, because the common man out there doesn't have enough money to pay you. Imagine if the government committed to doing business with its own people. How much would we have as manufacturers, as people doing farming? That is where the problem is. Our government is not walking the talk. They're just out there politicking. You raised a question which was, if our eggs are more expensive and we are not earning, how are we then to afford it? It is that same person who is selling that egg who will go out and buy your suit. So if you are willing to spend on him, he'll be willing to spend on you. He will have an income, a higher purchase power, and you'll also have a higher purchase power. Believe me, if you go to the first world, things are not cheap. Food is not cheap. For a proper meal, you'll spend more than $20 in the UK or in the US. But here in Kenya, we want to spend $150, and it is our mentality that we have to spend really cheap, bargaining even to just buy a banana, that has gotten us to where we are today.
All right, and yes, sir, you wanted to add something to
Yes. SME, small and medium enterprises, they're not getting loans from the government because the government is borrowing from our local banks. So another way to stimulate this economy, we're telling the young people, you go and learn, and if you don't get a job, do business. Where do I get the seed capital to do that business? But if we empower a small and medium-term enterprises in terms of financing, I'm talking about more budget allocation to funds like the Youth Fund, the Women Enterprise Fund, and the Wezo Fund. As you speak, the only fund running in Wezo Fund is the 6 billion shillings that were invested, I think, in 2007, in 2013, when we avoided that repeat election, and the president said, whatever money is saved, you're going to create a fund. No other money has been added to that fund. And as a result, young people, I have thousands of applications of people who want to access Wezo Fund and Youth Fund in my constituency, but they can't because there's no money to lend to them. Because the youth that were lent that money 3 years ago have not repaid it, so that money is available. So we need to invest in the young person of this country. We need to invest in our small and medium enterprise. We need to invest in that small investor down there. We're talking about agriculture. Let us talk about, I think, Garana Kulalu. Let us think about how do we make that, even if it's a 50 by 100 plot, let us empower that person to plant their own food. And that way, we will achieve even the big
economy. All right, we need to wind up, but we cannot also ignore the fact that leadership has a huge role to play. And going back to Kotu and even yesterday's, May Day celebrations at Uhuru Park, there are those who feel that, for instance, the Secretary General, Francis Atwoli, who's been there now for 18 years and counting, has been there way too long. Is he still interested? Is he still able to be in touch with what the common worker needs? The needs of the worker have changed over time.
Yes.
18 years is a long time.
It is.
And also when you look at his posture, it seems to be more political than fighting for the worker. Your thoughts?
Of course, labor movement is all about politics. It's some extent politics, but then I would take your cue and say the manners of austerity at the helm. I mean, who does even know how Kotu officials are elected? It's a closed shop. It is something that has been monopolized by a few individuals who have turned it into a cash cow, and which has lost touch with the common worker out there. I think to revamp this institution, the government or the worker himself needs to step in. We need to ask for transparency. We need to have elections where workers are involved. It is the same with TSC. Turned into a closed shop. See what is happening. Instead of supporting the government when the government is right, it's now fighting the government, and it is the common mwananchi who is losing.
Okay.
Yes.
Mheshimiwa, your thoughts on whether maybe even the leadership of Kotu at some point needs to change?
Young people and young competent people always bring fresh ideas. And look at the people that have made change in the world, whether it's in the business sector or whatever sector you're talking about. It has been fresh minds. Uber now has revolutionized the taxi business in Kenya, an invention of young people. Google, and I can go on and on and on. So if you have somebody who got into the helm of KOTU when I was probably 10 years of age, maybe in class 5, and still the Secretary General of KOTU, something needs to change. We can't keep telling the young people that we're the leaders of tomorrow, and we never give them a chance.
And tomorrow never gets here.
And tomorrow actually never gets there.
Tomorrow never comes.
And that's why every year, during Labor Day, the conversation is about wage increase and minimum wage. Are you telling me that there are no other issues about workers apart from their minimum wage and salary increase? There are very many issues that affect the working force in this country. And the Secretary General told he's only interested in not in William Ruto not becoming president in 2022, and not the plight of the workers. And therefore, I think the workers of this country need to stand up to their leaders and tell them this is not what we want. And I've even said that myself. If I attend a function and whatever I'm speaking is out of topic, as in I have said, even in Parliament you have you're out of order. So the public need to tell us, the politicians and leaders, you are out of order.
And you could do that even by voting with your feet and leaving any gathering.
Oh, yes.
Gentlemen, we'll have to wind up. I'll need your closing comments, and maybe it can come in form of advice to the worker, maybe one to the worker, one to the government, on what we need to do in terms of ensuring that we have a brighter future. Definitely, the Kenyan workforce is the backbone of this economy, yet it is the most harassed. I'll start with you, Philip.
Mine would be to the government, and that is that we are facing a time bomb, and we've said this time and again, and in fact we faced it. The youth unemployment is a ticking time bomb, but we could change that, turn it upside down, and take the youth as a blessing. We have a bulging youth population which can be put to good use if properly trained, if productively used. They can be the driving force for our economy, and the government should take that really serious.
All right, Mheshimiwa, your closing comment.
To the government, we have launched many ambitious projects. We said that every graduate or every university student will have access to internships. We need to implement these promises that we made to the young people of this country, because that is the labor force, and those are the people that will revolutionize the labor movement, that will revolutionize our economy, because they come in with fresh ideas. We need to think about our civil service. We have a civil service that has been there since independence. We have not had any new, we have hardly had any new employees in government, and therefore part of it is the issue about unemployment, and the reason why we have a government that ends up coming up with policies and issues that do not affect or do not reflect well with Mwananchi or affect the normal Mwananchi is because we have people that have overstayed in government and even in civil service. Let us have a fresh civil service, and let us involve the youth of this country, and as I said, that SME, huyo mwananchi wa kawaida, tuminvolve kwa maendeleo, and we'll see a change.
Thank you, gentlemen. That is Member of Parliament for Molo, Kuria Kimani. Thank you for joining us, and Philip Magal, who is a lawyer. That is the state of the nation. Because of time, we'll have to stop it right there. But Morning Express continues, and today on Black and White, which is coming up later, is going to be an interesting subject. So just would like to recap the question that we had asked earlier on, and this is to do with a report that came out not too long ago, and apparently Kenyan men are not using condoms as often or as much as is expected. The expected number should be 40. We are currently at 14 per year, per man per year. And the question that we'd like to find out is, why do you think the uptake on condoms among Kenyan men is still very low? Do let us know what your thoughts are. We'll be getting to Black and White not too long from now. For now, we take that break.